The morning sun was barely up when Maya stepped off the bus at Lincoln Street. She clutched a small leather folder against her chest, the kind you'd find at a thrift store for $2. Inside was a single sheet of paper, her audition registration form. She had filled it out 3 weeks ago in the back room of the restaurant where she worked. Her hands still smelling of dish soap and cooking oil. The Riverside Music Conservatory building stood tall in front of her, all glass windows and marble steps. It was the kind of place she'd only seen in magazines. Maya looked down at her dress. It was navy blue with small flowers, clean and pressed, but anyone could tell it had been worn many times before. The hem had been mended twice. Her shoes were practical flats, not the elegant heels most women wore to places like this. She took a deep breath and started walking up the steps. Inside the lobby, everything gleamed. The floors were so polished she could see her reflection. A massive chandelier hung from the ceiling, casting warm light everywhere. Young people filled the space, most of them in their 20s, maybe early 30s at most. They wore designer clothes and carried expensive instrument cases. They spoke in confident voices about their previous performances, their teachers at prestigious schools, their upcoming recitals in Europe. Maya was 42 years old. She felt every single one of those years right now. She found the registration desk where a young woman sat with perfectly styled hair and bright red lipstick. The woman looked up as Maya approached, her eyes quickly scanning Maya from head to toe. Something shifted in her expression, a tiny curl at the corner of her mouth that wasn't quite a smile. "Name?" the woman asked, her fingers poised over her keyboard. "Maya Reyes," she said quietly. The woman typed, then glanced at her screen. Her eyebrows went up slightly. "You're registered for the piano audition?" "Yes, that's right." "And you're—" The woman looked at the screen again. 42? Maya felt her cheeks warm. "Yes?" The woman's lips pressed together like she was trying not to laugh. "Okay, well, you can wait over there with the others. They'll call you when it's your turn." She handed Maya a number card. "Number 47. Maya took the card and walked toward the waiting area. As she passed, she heard the registration woman whisper to her colleague. They both giggled softly. Maya pretended not to hear. The waiting area was filled with nervous energy. Young musicians practiced finger exercises in the air, hummed scales under their breath, and paced back and forth. Maya found a seat in the corner and sat down carefully. She placed her folder on her lap and folded her hands over it. A young man next to her glanced over. He had an expensive watch and styled hair with that messy-on-purpose look that actually takes a lot of time. "First audition?" he asked. "Yes," Maya said. "What school did you study at?" "I didn't go to music school." His eyes widened slightly. "Oh, so you had private teachers then?" "Who did you study with?" Maya hesitated. "I taught myself mostly." The young man blinked at her, then gave an uncomfortable laugh. "Right, well, good luck with that." He turned away and started talking to someone else, and Maya heard him say something she couldn't quite make out. More laughter followed. The hours crept by. One by one, numbers were called. Each time someone came back from their audition, the others crowded around asking how it went, what pieces they played, what the judges said. Maya stayed in her corner, watching and waiting. Finally, a voice called out, "Number 47. Maya stood up. Her legs felt shaky, but she made the move forward. She walked down a long hallway toward the audition room. Behind her, she heard voices rising. "Did you see her? She's got to be someone's mom or something. Maybe she's lost and thinks, this is a different event. This should be entertaining at least." The laughter wasn't even hidden anymore. Maya reached the door to the audition hall. A student volunteer opened it for her, barely looking at her face. The hall was bigger than she'd expected. A beautiful grand piano sat on the stage under bright lights. In front of the stage, 3 judges sat at a long table. Behind them, about 50 seats were filled with people, other musicians waiting for their turns, conservatory students, faculty members. It was tradition here that auditions were open to observers. As Maya walked down the center aisle toward the stage, the whispers started. They rolled through the audience like a wave. She kept her eyes forward, but she could feel every stare, hear every barely concealed snicker. She climbed the steps to the stage. The piano waited for her, black and glossy and perfect. She had never played an instrument this fine in her entire life. One of the judges, an older man with gray hair and reading glasses, looked at his paper. "Name?" "Maya Reyes." He glanced up at her, then back at his paper. His eyebrows drew together. "And what will you be performing today?" "Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 2, Maya said. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. The first movement. A ripple of surprise went through the judges. The gray-haired man, the conservatory's dean, exchanged glances with the other judges. Someone in the audience laughed out loud. It was a mean sound, not trying to be polite or hidden anymore. The dean looked at Maya for a long moment. She could see the doubt in his eyes, the impatience. He'd already decided she was wasting his time. His hand moved to the papers in front of him, and she saw him pick up a red pen. He was already preparing to mark her form with rejection. "You may begin when ready," he said flatly. "The way you'd speak to someone just to get through an unpleasant task quickly." Maya walked to the piano bench and sat down. She adjusted the height slightly, testing the pedals with her feet. The audience wasn't even trying to be quiet anymore. Whispers and giggles filled the hall. "Look at her hands," someone said loud enough for everyone to hear. "Those aren't pianist hands," it was true. Maya's hands were strong but rough. Years of washing dishes, scrubbing pots, carrying heavy trays had marked them. They weren't the soft, carefully maintained hands of someone who'd lived a life dedicated only to music, but they were her hands, and they knew what to do. Maya closed her eyes. She let all the noise fade away, the laughter, the judgment, the doubt. In her mind, she was back in the tiny apartment above the restaurant. She was 7 years old again, watching her father bring home that old upright piano, the one he'd saved for months to buy. She remembered her mother's voice, tired from long shifts but still gentle. "Music doesn't care where you come from or what you wear. It only cares what's in your heart." Maya opened her eyes, placed her hands above the keys, and took one last breath. The hall behind her buzzed with mockery. In 3 seconds, everything was about to change. Maya's fingers hovered above the piano keys for just a heartbeat. Behind her, someone coughed in that fake way people do when they're trying to hold back laughter. Another person whispered something and giggles rippled through the seats. She didn't turn around. She didn't acknowledge them at all. Instead, she thought about the piano in her family's apartment. That old upright with the chipped keys and the middle C that always stuck a little. She thought about how many nights she'd sat at that piano after everyone else had gone to sleep. How many mornings she'd woken up at 4 in the morning before her shift at the restaurant, just to practice for an hour in the dark. 35 years. That's how long she'd been playing in secret. Maya let her hands drop to the keys. The first notes of Rachmaninoff's concerto filled the hall, and the world changed. It wasn't just sound. It was everything at once, a wave of emotion so powerful it seemed to push the air itself. The opening chords crashed through the space with a force that made people sit up straight in their chairs. The laughter died mid-breath. The whispers cut off like someone had flipped a switch. Maya's hands moved across the keys with a confidence that seemed impossible. Her fingers, those rough, worn fingers that someone had mocked just moments ago, danced and flew and pressed with perfect precision. Every note rang clear and true. Every phrase built on the last, climbing higher, reaching deeper. The gray-haired dean dropped his red pen. It clattered against the table, but no one noticed. His mouth had fallen slightly open. In the audience, a young woman who had laughed the loudest just minutes before now sat frozen, her eyes wide. She'd been studying piano for 15 years at the best schools money could buy. She'd never heard anyone play like this. Maya wasn't playing the piece the way it was usually taught. She wasn't following the safe academic interpretation that every conservatory student learned. Her version was different, raw in places, tender in others. When the melody called for sadness, you could hear 35 years of longing in every note. When it demanded power, you could feel the strength of someone who'd spent decades working with their hands, pouring every ounce of determination into the music. She played like someone who'd earned every single note. The technical parts that made most pianists nervous, the cascading runs and complex chord progressions, she handled them like breathing. Her hands knew exactly where to go. Years of practicing the same pieces over and over, with no teacher to tell her she was good enough, no audience to applaud, no validation at all except the music itself. It had all led to this moment. One of the judges, a woman with silver hair pulled back in a tight bun, leaned forward. She was a concert pianist herself, famous. Enough that people traveled across the country to hear her perform. Tears had started forming in her eyes. She'd heard this concerto played by some of the world's greatest musicians, She'd played it herself in Carnegie Hall 20 years ago. But something about this performance was different. It had a truth to it that technique alone could never create. Maya moved into the second theme, the gentle singing melody that Rachmaninoff had poured his heart into. Her touch on the keys became soft, almost delicate, but somehow even more powerful for it. Every person in that hall felt something shift inside them. The music was speaking directly to something deep and forgotten, reminding them why they'd fallen in love with music in the first place, before the competitions and the pressure and the judgment. In the back of the hall, a conservatory student who'd been accepted to the program just last month felt tears running down his face. He didn't even try to wipe them away. He'd been so proud of his acceptance, so sure that he was special. Now he realized he'd been playing music like it was a sport to win. This woman on stage, this woman they'd all laughed at, she was showing him what music actually meant, the piece built toward its climax. Maya's whole body moved with the music now, swaying slightly, her face showing every emotion the composer had written into the notes. Her hands flew across the keyboard in the thundering passages, then pulled back for the quiet moments with perfect control. She'd memorized every measure not by drilling it mechanically, but by living with it for years, letting it become part of her. The technical perfection was astounding. But what really stunned everyone was the feeling behind it. This wasn't a performance designed to impress judges or win competitions. This was someone finally, after 35 years, getting to speak the language they'd been forced to whisper in private. Every missed opportunity was in that music. Every time she'd had to choose work over practice. Every time she'd watched younger musicians perform while she stood in the shadows. Every time someone had made her feel like her dreams had an expiration date. It all poured out through her fingers into those keys, and somehow, impossibly, it was beautiful. The dean sat completely still, his rejection stamp forgotten on the table beside him. He'd been judging auditions for 23 years. He thought he'd seen everything. He'd heard child prodigies who could play impossibly difficult pieces before they were 10 years old. He'd heard conservatory students with perfect technique and impressive credentials. But he'd never, not once, heard someone play with this kind of depth. Maya reached the final measures of the movement. The music rose one last time, powerful and certain, then resolved into the closing chords. Her hands lifted from the keys and settled gently in her lap. For 3 full seconds there was absolute silence in the hall. No one moved, no one breathed. Then someone started clapping. It was the silver-haired judge, the famous concert pianist. She was standing now, tears streaming down her face, applauding with her hands held high. The sound broke the spell. The entire hall erupted, everyone was on their feet. The applause was deafening, filling every corner of the space. People weren't just clapping politely like they did after most auditions. They were cheering, shouting, some of them crying openly. The young man who'd asked Maya about her training stood with his mouth hanging open, his hands frozen in mid-clap, looking like someone had just explained a magic trick and somehow made it more magical. Maya stood up from the piano bench slowly. She looked out at the audience, at all these people who'd laughed at her just 10 minutes ago. They were giving her a standing ovation. She didn't smile or wave or bow dramatically. She just stood there, taking it in, her eyes bright with emotion she'd kept buried for 35 years. The dean stumbled to his feet, nearly knocking his chair over. He was waving his hands frantically, trying to get everyone to quiet down. It took almost a full minute before the applause died down enough for him to speak. "Miss Reyes," he said, and his voice actually shook. Where did you study? Who was your instructor?" Maya looked at him steadily. "I didn't have an instructor," she said. "I taught myself." The hall went completely silent again. People looked at each other in disbelief. "That's not possible," someone in the audience said. Maya's voice was quiet, but firm. "I've been playing for 35 years. Every morning before work. Every night after. Sometimes just for 20 minutes, sometimes for hours. Just me and an old piano in my apartment." She paused. "I never performed for anyone before today. I didn't think I was good enough." The silver-haired judge had moved closer to the stage. "What do you do for work?" she asked gently. "I work at my family's restaurant," Maya said. "I've been washing dishes and waiting tables since I was 16. The hall was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. The silver-haired judge walked slowly toward the stage. Her heels clicked against the floor, the only sound in the completely silent hall. When she reached the steps, she climbed them carefully, never taking her eyes off Maya. Up close, Maya could see the woman's face clearly. She had kind eyes, the kind that crinkled at the corners from years of smiling. But right now, those eyes were filled with tears. May I? The woman asked, holding out her hands. Maya wasn't sure what she meant, but she nodded. The judge took both of Maya's hands in hers and turned them over gently, looking at the palms, the calluses, the small scars from kitchen burns and cuts. She ran her thumb over Maya's fingertips, feeling the roughness there. These hands, the judge said softly, her voice breaking, have worked so hard. Then she did something no one expected. She pulled Maya into a tight embrace. The famous concert pianist, winner of international competitions, teacher to some of the world's most promising young musicians, hugged this dishwasher from a family restaurant like she was someone precious. The audience erupted again. This time it wasn't just applause. People were crying openly now, wiping their eyes with tissues and shirt sleeves. The young woman who'd laughed earlier had her face buried in her hands, her shoulders shaking. When the judge finally stepped back, she kept one of Maya's hands in hers. She turned to face the audience, and when she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the hall. I have been playing piano for 52 years, she said. I have studied with masters. I have performed in every major concert hall in the world. I have heard the greatest pianists of our generation. She paused, squeezing Maya's hand. And I have never in all those years heard anything like what we just witnessed. The dean had made his way onto the stage now, too. He looked different than he had before. The dismissive expression was gone. He seemed almost embarrassed, though he was trying to hide it. Miss Reyes, he said, clearing his throat, I must ask you more about your background. You said you taught yourself, but surely you had some formal training, even just in the beginning? Maya shook her head. My parents bought me a piano when I was 7. It cost them 3 months of savings. I took lessons for maybe 6 months, but then my teacher moved away and we couldn't afford another one. So I just kept playing on my own. I got books from the library. Later, when the internet came, I watched videos. But mostly I just practiced. For 35 years, the third judge said from his seat at the table. He sounded stunned. You practiced alone with no guidance for 35 years? I had to work, Maya said simply. My parents needed help with the restaurant. We all had to work. But I couldn't stop playing. Even when I was exhausted, even when my hands hurt from doing dishes all day, I still needed to play. It was the only thing that was just mine. A reporter had been sitting in the back of the hall. She'd come to write a routine piece about the conservatory's annual auditions. Now she was furiously typing on her phone. This wasn't a routine story anymore. This was something else entirely. The silver-haired judge turned to the dean. We need to do something about this, she said firmly. Right now. The dean nodded slowly. Miss Reyes, would you be willing to stay? We need to discuss some things with you. Important things. Maya looked confused. I have to work tonight. My shift starts at 5. Please, the judge said. Just for an hour. I promise you this is important. Maya hesitated, then pulled out her old phone and sent a text to her mother. After a moment, she nodded. Okay, 1 hour. The dean asked the remaining audition candidates to take a break. As people filed out of the hall, many of them stopped to look at Maya. Some smiled. Some looked ashamed. The young man who dismissed her earlier stood at the edge of the stage, shifting his weight from foot to foot. Miss Reyes, he said quietly. Maya looked at him. I'm really sorry. For what I said earlier, that was wrong. Maya studied his face for a moment. He looked genuinely sorry, but also young and scared. She remembered being young, though she'd never had the confidence he'd shown earlier. It's okay, she said. We all make mistakes. He nodded gratefully and hurried out. The judges led Maya to a smaller room off the main hall. It was clearly a faculty lounge, with comfortable chairs and a coffee maker in the corner. They all sat down, and for a moment no one spoke. Finally, the silver-haired judge leaned forward. My name is Catherine Wells, she said. And I want to help you. Help me? Maya asked. With what? Your gift, Catherine said. What you have, what you can do, it's extraordinary. You know that, don't you? Maya looked down at her hands. I just like to play. It's more than that, the dean said. Miss Reyes, what you performed today would be impressive coming from any of our advanced students. But the fact that you taught yourself with no formal training while working full-time? He shook his head. It's remarkable. It's more than remarkable. It's unprecedented. Catherine pulled out her phone. That reporter who was in the audience? She works for a major news outlet. She's already posted a short clip of your performance online. She turned the phone to show Maya. Maya stared at the screen. The video showed her at the piano, her hands moving across the keys. Below it, the comments were already pouring in. Hundreds of them. Then thousands. That's from 15 minutes ago, Catherine said. It already has 50,000 views. Maya felt dizzy. I don't understand. People connect with real stories, the third judge said. He was younger than the others, maybe in his 40s. And your story is real. You're not some privileged prodigy who had every advantage. You're someone who loved music so much that you kept going, even when no one was watching, even when you had every reason to give up. Catherine's phone kept buzzing. She glanced at it and her eyes widened. 100,000 views now, she said softly. The dean stood up and walked to the window. He was quiet for a long moment. Miss Reyes, I'm going to be honest with you. When you walked on that stage today, I had already decided to reject you. I judged you before you played a single note. That was wrong of me and I apologize. Maya didn't know what to say. He turned back to face her. But now I want to offer you something. The conservatory has a special program for exceptional musicians. We don't publicize it much because we rarely find anyone who qualifies. It's a full scholarship. We would work with you to develop your skills even further, connect you with opportunities to perform, help you record your music professionally. I can't, Maya said immediately. I have to work. My parents need me at the restaurant. We can barely keep it running as it is. Catherine reached across and took Maya's hand again. What if we could help with that too? What if we could find a way to make this work? I don't understand, Maya said. Her head was spinning. An hour ago, people had been laughing at her. Now they were offering her things she'd never even let herself dream about. Catherine's phone buzzed again. She looked at it and smiled. 200,000 views. And I just got a message from the Steinway Society. They want to know if you'd be willing to perform at their gala next month. The Steinway Society? Maya whispered. She knew that name. Every pianist knew that name. They only invited the best in the world. This is just the beginning, Catherine said. Your life is about to change, Maya. The question is, are you ready to let it? Maya thought about her parents. She thought about the restaurant, the old piano in the apartment, the thousands of early mornings and late nights. She thought about all the times she'd told herself that her dreams were childish, that she needed to be practical, that it was too late for her. Then she thought about how it felt to finally play for people, to share the music that had lived inside her for so long. She looked up at the three judges, these important people who'd gone from dismissing her to believing in her in the space of 10 minutes. I don't know what to say, she admitted. Say yes, Catherine urged gently. Say yes to yourself, finally. Outside the room, they could hear voices in the hallway. More people had come back. Word was spreading through the conservatory like wildfire. Everyone wanted to know who the woman was, the one who'd played like that. Maya's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out and saw a text from her mother. Your father is crying. He says he always knew. Come home when you can. We love you. Maya's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Catherine, at the dean, at the possibility of a completely different life spreading out before her like sheet music waiting to be played. She took a deep breath. Okay, she said. Yes. 3 months felt like 3 years. Maya stood backstage at Carnegie Hall, her hands shaking slightly as she smoothed down the front of her dress. This one was new, a deep burgundy that Catherine had helped her pick out. It fit perfectly, tailored just for her. But even in this beautiful dress, in this legendary venue, Maya still felt like the woman who'd stepped off the bus that morning in her thrift store clothes. 5 minutes. Miss Reyes? A stagehand whispered as he passed by. 5 minutes. In 5 minutes, she would walk onto one of the most famous stages in the world. The same stage where legends had performed. And somehow, impossibly, she was about to join them. The past 3 months had been a whirlwind. After that video went viral, everything happened so fast. By the next morning, it had 20 million views. News outlets from around the world wanted to interview her. Record labels called Catherine's phone constantly. People Maya had never met were arguing about her on social media. Some saying she was the most inspiring story they'd ever heard. Others claiming it had to be fake because no one could play like that without formal training. But it wasn't fake. It was just her life. The conservatory had kept their promise. They'd given her the scholarship, but more than that, They'd helped figure out the complicated parts. Catherine had connected Maya's parents with a restaurant consultant who helped them hire additional staff, so Maya didn't have to work as many shifts. A local business owner who'd seen the video offered to sponsor some of their expenses. The community had rallied around the family in ways Maya never expected. Her parents were here tonight. Maya had seen them earlier, sitting in the fourth row, her father in a suit he'd bought special for the occasion, her mother in a dress she'd been saving for years. They looked proud and terrified at the same time. "You're going to be amazing," Catherine said, appearing at Maya's side. She'd become more than a mentor over these months. She was a friend, someone who understood the weight of performance, the fear and the joy of it. "What if I mess up?" Maya asked. "What if I forget everything?" Catherine smiled. "Then you'll be human. But Maya, you won't forget. You've been preparing for this your whole life. Every morning in that apartment, every late night after work, it was all leading here." A young assistant approached with a clipboard. "Miss Reyes, the hall is completely full. They're ready for you." Maya's heart hammered in her chest. "Full? How many people is that?" 2,800 seats, the assistant said, plus the people watching the live stream. "Last I checked, about 100,000 people online." Maya felt her knees go weak. Catherine steadied her with a hand on her arm. "Breathe," Catherine said softly. "Just breathe. And remember, they're not here because they want to judge you. They're here because your story touched them. They're here because you reminded them that it's never too late to chase what you love." Maya nodded, trying to calm her racing thoughts. She thought about the old piano in the apartment. She'd played it just yesterday morning before catching the train to New York. The middle C still stuck a little. Her father had offered to get it fixed now that they had some extra money, but Maya had told him not to. She liked it the way it was. It reminded her where she came from. "It's time," the stage manager said. Maya walked toward the stage entrance. She could hear the murmur of the crowd beyond the curtain. Thousands of people waiting. Some of them had paid hundreds of dollars for tickets. Some had traveled from other countries. All because of her. The thought was overwhelming. Then she heard it. The announcement. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the Carnegie Hall stage Maya Reyes." The curtain opened and the applause hit her like a wave. Maya stepped out into the light and for a moment she couldn't see anything. The stage lights were too bright. But as her eyes adjusted, she could make out the audience. Row after row of people, all of them standing, all of them clapping. She saw her parents. Her mother was already crying, her hand pressed to her mouth. Her father stood tall beside her, his eyes shining with tears he was trying to hold back. Maya walked to the piano. It was a beautiful Steinway, the same model that famous pianists had played on this stage for decades. She sat down on the bench and adjusted it slightly, testing the pedals. The hall slowly grew quiet as people took their seats. In the silence, Maya could hear her own heartbeat. She placed her hands on the keys and closed her eyes for just a moment. She thought about being 7 years old, watching her father struggle to fit that old, upright piano through their apartment door. She thought about her mother staying up late to help her practice even after working double shifts at the restaurant. She thought about every person who'd ever made her feel like her dreams were foolish, like she'd missed her chance. Then she thought about that day at the audition, the laughter, the judgment, and how it had all fallen away the moment she started to play. Maya opened her eyes and began. The first notes of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major filled the hall. She'd chosen something different for tonight, something quieter and more intimate than the Rachmaninoff. This piece was about beauty and simplicity, about finding peace in the middle of chaos. Her hands moved across the keys with a confidence she'd earned through thousands of hours of practice. But more than technique, she played with heart. Every note carried the weight of her journey, the struggles and the sacrifices and the stubborn refusal to let go of the thing she loved most. The audience sat completely still, barely breathing. In the fourth row, her father reached over and took her mother's hand. Maya moved through the piece like she was telling a story. The gentle opening theme spoke of hope. The middle section, more turbulent and passionate, carried all the frustration of years spent working instead of performing. And the return to the main theme at the end felt like coming home, like finally being exactly where you were meant to be. When the final notes faded into silence, no one moved for a long moment. Then the hall erupted. The standing ovation was immediate and thunderous. People weren't just clapping, they were cheering, shouting, some of them openly weeping. Maya stood and bowed, and the applause only grew louder. She looked out at the audience and saw so many faces. Young and old, wealthy and working class, people from every background imaginable, and she realized something important. Her story wasn't just about her anymore. It had become something bigger. She was proof that talent could bloom anywhere, that dedication mattered more than privilege, that it was never, ever too late. A little girl in the front row, maybe 8 years old, stood on her chair to see better. Her eyes were wide with wonder. Maya smiled at her, and the girl smiled back, bouncing excitedly. Maya played 3 more pieces that night. Each one brought the same response, waves of applause that seemed to shake the walls. By the time she played her final piece, the Rachmaninoff concerto that had changed everything, people were recording on their phones, capturing the moment to share with the world. When it was finally over, when she'd taken her last bow and the curtain closed, Maya stood alone on the stage for just a moment. The applause continued beyond the curtain, but here in this quiet space she let herself feel everything. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Catherine came rushing backstage with tears streaming down her face. Maya, that was perfect. Absolutely perfect. The stage door burst open and her parents appeared, having somehow convinced someone to let them backstage. Her mother ran to her and wrapped her in a tight hug, speaking rapidly in Spanish, telling her how proud she was, how beautiful it was, how she'd always known. Her father hugged her next, and she felt his tears on her shoulder. "Your music," he said, his voice rough with emotion. It was worth every penny of that piano. Every single penny. People crowded around her. Representatives from record labels, concert promoters, musicians who wanted to collaborate. Everyone wanted a piece of her time, her story, her future. But Maya kept one hand holding her mother's and one holding her father's. Because no matter how big this got, no matter how many stages she played on or how many people knew her name, she never wanted to forget the 2 people who'd made it all possible. A reporter pushed through the crowd with a camera crew. "Miss Reyes, how does it feel to perform at Carnegie Hall?" Maya thought about the question. How could she possibly explain it? How could words capture the journey from that tiny apartment to this legendary stage? "It feels like finally coming home," she said simply, and that was the truth. After 42 years, after 35 years of playing in the shadows, after a lifetime of being told she'd missed her chance, Maya had finally found her place. The best part? This was only the beginning. 6 months after Carnegie Hall, Maya sat in a recording studio in Los Angeles. Through the glass window, she could see the sound engineers adjusting levels on their boards. Behind her, a full orchestra waited patiently for her cue. They were recording her first album, a collection of pieces that had meant something to her over the years. It was surreal. All of it. 3 major record labels had competed to sign her. The offers were generous, more money than she'd ever imagined having. But Maya had chosen the smallest label, the one that promised her creative control and didn't try to change who she was. They wanted her to record the music she loved, not what they thought would sell the most copies. "Ready when you are, Maya," the producer said through the intercom. Maya nodded and positioned her hands over the piano keys. This was Debussy, Clair de Lune, one of the first pieces she'd ever learned from a library book when she was 12 years old. Back then, she'd played it on that old upright with the sticky middle C, her father asleep in the next room after a long shift at the restaurant. She began to play, and the orchestra joined her. The music filled the studio, beautiful and melancholy and perfect. When she finished, the engineers erupted in applause through the glass. But the best part of Maya's new life wasn't the recording studios, or the concerts, or the recognition. It was what she did on Thursday evenings. Every Thursday at 6 o'clock, Maya taught a class at the Riverside Community Center. It wasn't a prestigious conservatory or an expensive private studio. It was a humble room with folding chairs and a slightly out-of-tune piano that the center had bought secondhand. Her students weren't prodigies or wealthy kids whose parents could afford the best instruction. They were people like her, working adults who'd always loved music but never had the chance to learn properly. Immigrants who'd left their dreams behind in other countries. Retirees who'd spent their whole lives being practical and now wanted to try something just for themselves. Tonight, 15 people sat in those folding chairs, ranging in age from 23 to 71. There was Carlos, a construction worker with rough hands just like Maya's used to be. There was June, a nurse who worked night shifts and came to class exhausted but determined. There was Mr. Peterson, a retired accountant who'd bought himself a keyboard for his 70th birthday. "Okay, everyone," Maya said, smiling at her students. "Who wants to share what they practiced this week?" June raised her hand hesitantly. "I worked on that piece you gave me. The simple one. But I keep messing up the left-hand part." "Show me," Maya said gently. June moved to the piano, nervous but brave. She started playing, and sure enough, her left hand stumbled over the accompaniment. She stopped, frustrated. "See? I can't do it." Maya sat down beside her on the bench. "You're being too hard on yourself. You've only been playing for 2 months. Here, try it like this." She demonstrated the left-hand pattern slowly, breaking it down into smaller pieces. "Don't try to play it fast yet. Just get the pattern in your muscle memory." June tried again, this time slower. It was better, not perfect, but better. "There you go," Maya said. "That's progress. Remember, I practiced for 35 years before anyone heard me play. You don't have to be perfect today or tomorrow or even next year. You just have to keep showing up." The words resonated through the room. Everyone there knew Maya's story. They'd seen the viral videos, read the articles. She was famous now, but she still came here every Thursday. Still sat with them and taught them with patience and understanding that no conservatory professor could match. Because Maya knew what it felt like to doubt yourself. She knew what it felt like to have rough hands and tired eyes and a dream that seemed impossible. She knew what it meant to love something so much that you kept doing it even when no one was watching, even when you had every reason to quit. After class, several students stayed behind to talk. Mr. Peterson approached her with his phone. "My granddaughter saw your Carnegie Hall video. She's 7 and she wants to start piano lessons now, because of you." Maya felt her eyes sting with tears. "That's wonderful. I told her about our class," Mr. Peterson continued. "About how you teach people like me, people who thought they'd missed their chance. She said you're a hero." Maya shook her head. "I'm not a hero. I'm just someone who refused to give up on something I loved." "That's what makes you a hero," he said simply. After everyone left, Maya stayed behind to practice on the community center's piano. It was her ritual now. After teaching, she'd play for an hour just for herself. Sometimes she worked on pieces for upcoming concerts. Sometimes she just played whatever she felt like playing. Tonight she played the pieces that had sustained her through all those years of working at the restaurant. The simple melodies she'd learned from library books. The complex concertos she'd tackled without any teacher to tell her she was doing it right. Her phone buzzed with a text. It was Catherine. "Just confirmed you're performing at the Sydney Opera House in March. Can you believe it?" Maya smiled. No, she couldn't quite believe it. But she was learning to accept that this was her life now. Another text came through, this one from her mother. "Your father and I just tried the new recipe at the restaurant. He says it needs more garlic. Come home this weekend. We miss you." Home, the restaurant was doing better now. With the extra help they'd hired, her parents weren't working themselves to exhaustion anymore. They'd even taken a vacation last month, their first in 20 years. But they still ran the place, still served the same recipes they'd been making for decades. Maya had offered to buy them a house to set them up so they could retire. Her father had looked at her like she was crazy. "And do what?" he'd asked. "The restaurant is our life. Just like music is yours," she understood that. Some things weren't about money or success. They were about love and purpose and having something that made you who you are. Maya's phone rang. It was a video call from a number she didn't recognize. She answered it hesitantly. A young woman appeared on the screen, maybe 19 or 20. She had tears in her eyes. "Miss Reyes? I'm sorry to bother you. I got your number from someone at the conservatory. I hope that's okay." "It's fine," Maya said. "What's your name?" "I'm Lisa. I just wanted to tell you something. I was at your audition that day. I was one of the people who laughed at you." Maya remembered that day, the mockery, the judgment. But it felt like a lifetime ago now. "I felt terrible about it ever since," Lisa continued. "I was so arrogant, so sure that success only came one way. But watching you, seeing what you accomplished, it changed me. I'm teaching now at a community school in my neighborhood, kids who can't afford regular lessons. And I try to be the kind of teacher you are, patient, encouraging, real." Maya felt warmth spread through her chest. "That's wonderful, Lisa. Really wonderful. I just wanted to say thank you," Lisa said. "And I'm sorry for judging you, for being part of that crowd that laughed." "You were young," Maya said. "We all make mistakes. What matters is what you do after. They talked for a few more minutes, and when they hung up, Maya sat quietly in the empty community center. Outside, the sun was setting, casting orange light through the windows. She thought about how far she'd come from that morning when she stepped off the bus in her thrift store dress to now, preparing for international tours and recording albums. But the thing that made her happiest wasn't the fame or the opportunities. It was moments like this. Teaching June to play with her left hand, inspiring Mr. Peterson's granddaughter, helping Lisa become a better teacher. Her music had finally found its purpose. It wasn't just about her anymore. It was about showing people that their dreams mattered, that their age didn't matter, that the path they took didn't matter as much as the passion they brought to the journey. Maya stood up and walked to the piano one last time. She played a few chords, letting them ring out in the empty room. Then she packed up her things and headed toward the door. Tomorrow, she'd record more of her album. Next week, she had a concert in Chicago. Next month, interviews and photo shoots and all the things that came with her new life. But Thursday evening at 6 o'clock, she'd be back here. In this humble room with the folding chairs and the out-of-tune piano, teaching people who still believed it wasn't too late to learn something beautiful, because Maya had learned the most important lesson of all. Success wasn't about the stages you played on or the applause you received. It was about staying true to what you loved, about lifting others up along the way, about proving that passion and persistence could overcome any obstacle. She'd touched those piano keys at the audition, and everything had changed. But the real magic wasn't in that single performance. It was in all the years that came before it. Every morning practice session, every late night, every moment she chose to believe in herself when no one else did. That was the story that mattered. Not the applause or the fame, but the quiet courage to keep going. As Maya stepped out into the evening air, she smiled. Her father's old piano with the sticky middle C was still in the apartment. She'd go play it this weekend when she visited home. Some things, the most important things, you never leave behind.